You're listening to the Journey Podcast. What secrets about your mental health is your body trying to tell you? Stay tuned for more. This episode contains adult subject matter and some listeners may be triggered by this content. Listener discretion is advised. Hi, I'm Petra Brunbauer, and with decades of experience with sadness, pain, anxiety, and stress, I finally figured out how to leave all that behind. And this podcast shows you how to break free permanently so you can reclaim your sanity and find the self-esteem and energy to go after the life you desire. With real talk about mental health, holistic healing, and the tough journey of coming out the other end. This is the Journey Podcast. Welcome to today's episode. In this episode, we explore the profound connection between the mind and body, delving into how our mental and physical health are deeply intertwined. Our guest offers a fresh perspective on holistic well-being, discussing the limitations of traditional approaches and the importance of viewing health through an integrated lens. Chana Studley recovered from severe PTSD after 3 violent attacks in the UK and spent the next 25 years combining an Academy Award-winning career in Hollywood with coaching and counseling people with trauma, addictions, and relationship problems. After graduating from the One Thought Institute in 2018, she noticed that her 25 years of chronic pain had completely gone, and so conducted research to discover if she could reproduce this experience in others. Following the success of 5 case studies, she developed a program called Painless, and is now helping clients all over the world with all kinds of health issues and working with doctors and clinicians to introduce them to the 3 principles. Chana is also an international speaker and author. Chana has written 3 novels. The Myth of Low Self-Esteem, Painless, and Very Well was an Amazon #1 bestseller last year. Her latest book, Beyond Recovery, is a critique of traditional psychology, an introduction to the work of Sydney Banks, and over 40 stories of recovery from every kind of mental health issue as a result of an understanding of the 3 principles. Chana has a diploma in psychology and pharmacology, is a World Health Organization first responder, and a certified life coach. Here is my interview with Chana Studley. Hi, Chana. It's so great to have you on the podcast today. I've been looking forward to getting to chat with you because the mind-body connection is such a fascinating topic for today's conversation, and I'm actually really excited to dive in. So welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, hi, Petra. It's so nice to be here.
It's my pleasure to have you here. And this is a topic obviously very close to my heart as well, and that I'm passionate about. And I know that you are very passionate about this. So for starters, tell us a little bit about yourself and your story and where you've come from to do what you do today.
Yeah, sure. I grew up in England, in the UK, in the 70s and 80s, and I was mugged 3 times in the early 1980s, in my early 20s when I was in college. Like, when being mugged once is bad enough, but 3 times was pretty bad. The first time my skull was fractured in a nightclub. The second time I had 3 herniated discs when 3 men came out of the dark and slammed me on the ground, beat the living daylights out of me. I thought I was going to die. And then the third time was down in London, where a young kid threw a bicycle at my head. He wanted to steal the bike I was on, and he threw a bike at my head and broke my neck. Luckily, it was just the bones, which is bad enough, but luckily the spinal cord was only bruised. But he broke C2 and C3 in the vertebrae just below the skull. And so, as you can imagine, I had pretty severe PTSD, although nobody was calling it that at the time in the early 80s. It was still just becoming a recognized diagnosis at the time. So basically, I got, have a cup of tea, go home, suck it up and walk it off. That was the treatment I got. And I got really into some dark places. I was terrified to leave my house. You know, if you'd said, oh, no, it's okay, let's go to a painting class, let's go walk in the park, I'd be like, no. I knew the world was a dark and scary, dangerous place. So I really became a victim of my thinking, where I couldn't stop thinking about what happened to me. And then, thank God, I got well. I kind of was mentored by some wonderful women from a crisis center, and they kind of taught me how to kind of, get out of that story I created, and I started a whole new life, which kind of ended up here.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that with us. And part of me is speechless at the moment of what you experienced, and that kind of darkness and hatred that we have in the world towards other people, and that you had to experience that not just once but 3 times. And I'm very curious, those experiences, they obviously shaped who you became today and what you are doing. So how did those experiences influence what you do today?
Well, because I wasn't getting any help, I just ended up reliving and reliving the memories, and then reliving all the resentment and anger at the people who, like, my friends were amazing at the beginning, but then they moved on to other things, and I was left with my thinking, and I wasn't sleeping, I wasn't eating properly, I was, I got into quite a mess. And it wasn't till I remember I reached out to a women's crisis center in London, and this mentor, she said to me, "Are you ready to let go of your story?" And I was so offended, right? Because what I heard her say was, "It didn't happen, or it didn't hurt, and get over it." And in my head, I was screaming, "It did happen, it does hurt, and I can't get over it." Right? So I became I actually already was learning how to be a coach and a counselor at the time. So for the next 25 something years, I did lots of different trainings as, to be a coach, and became a trauma counselor. But I also had all this chronic pain that was just every 6 weeks, my back would go out and I'd be in agony lying on the floor. So I kind of had this weird life where at one moment I'm working on really big Hollywood movies, because I went from the theater to TV to Hollywood, and living in California, working on big Hollywood movies. Then I'm flat on my back in agony, and then I'm coaching addicts and trauma patients and stuff. So that was kind of my life for a long time. And I just thought that the pain was just going to be with me for the rest of my life. But I've been pain free for 8 years now, and the PTSD has been gone a very long time. And so that's what I love sharing with other people, that we can never be broken, and that we always have this potential to get well. Everybody can get well. It doesn't matter what you've been through. I'm proof of it, So, ending up having an Academy Award and flying around the world, when before that I couldn't get out of my own bedroom, I realized it was just my thinking that was holding me back. And that's what I like to share with my clients, that we're always feeling our thinking, and the world is a safe place. I had to learn how to tell my brain that I was safe.
That is a really empowering insight that you just shared there. And I just want to touch for a moment on what you just said. This, Hollywood career, and the sort of duality with the pain that would keep you from a lot of those things at times. Is that a common thing that you see with your clients, that women or people that you work with have stressful lives, or they have very high powered careers, and the things that they experience, they get stuck in the body, and then it comes out in chronic pain, or their thinking influences that as well? Is that something that you see very often, that there are these connections between the mind and body in this?
Yes, very much so. But I don't believe it can get stuck in the body. I don't think that's what's actually happening. Because I remember the first few times I heard people talk about pain and trauma being stuck in the body, and I'm, maybe it's my British sense of humor, but I get a little cynical and say, "Well, what do you mean stuck? Where is it? Is it in my elbow? Is it stuck in my lungs, my spleen? Is my resentment at my mother like stuck in my knees? What do you mean stuck in the body?" And they'll say, "No, no, it means like the feeling, the anxiety, your sensations." Oh, well, what are sensations made of? How would you know you're frightened? And it always comes back to thinking. It really, when you slow it down, it goes thinking, feeling, behavior. And so if we spend 18 hours a day in stressful, angry, or self-pitying, grumpy kind of thinking, you're not going to feel good, right? It's actually a very reliable system. I used to be terrified of my moods, but now I see that moods and feelings are actually my friend, because they're letting me know the quality of my thinking. Like, if someone's thinking happy, joyful, abundant thinking, they cannot be in a low mood, right? It's very reliable. If you're thinking bad, grumpy, angry, resentful thinking, you're going to feel low, grumpy, angry, and resentful, right? So when I started to see how experience is really created and how thought is a spiritual energy. And I have no idea what I'm saying right now. Who can explain spiritual energy? But it's traveling through us all the time. It's a blessing. It's how we experience life. So if thought is always moving and I'm feeling my thinking, then even if I have a low or angry or anxious thought, it's moved on instantly. And it can be followed by a fresh, new, beautiful thought if I understand how it works. And all those tools and techniques that I was using for many years with my clients, I see now that they were actually messing with the system. That's why my pain continued and continued, because the few times I went to professionals for help and they would say, tell me about what happened to you. Let's go back into the past and look at it. Let's talk about your childhood. Well, all those painful memories are just going to rev the nervous system up even more and give the message to my brain that I'm in danger. There's no healing in that, which is why I've encountered many, many people who've come to me who've done the journaling and the meditation and the EMDR and the tapping, and they've tried all that stuff and they're exhausted because their nervous systems aren't getting a chance to settle down. Now, people listening might going, that's denial, right? Well, I'm in no denial about what happened to me. I had some really violent, horrible things happen. And if I think about them in a low mood, it's a disaster. I'm crying, you're crying, everybody's going to be crying about it. But I can tell you in a lot of detail about what happened to me in the past from a better state of mind. And I can tell it with understanding, even compassion. And that's where the healing is. So I see now that my body was screaming at me to slow down and come back to this moment. Stop being in the past. Stop worrying about the future. Be in this moment. And I believe that's why my pain went away.
That's a really interesting perspective, because we do hear a lot that through the somatic experiencing, right, that things get stuck in your body, the emotions and experiences. So I like the fact that you have a different way of looking at that. And so the interesting part of that is that you did manage to overcome your chronic pain. What did that include for you to take that step? When I remember being in some of those situations after trauma that I experienced, if you would have just told me to think happy thoughts, that it wouldn't have happened, right? I was stuck in that kind of cloud, right?
Yeah, that's not it.
So what does that look like when you talk about the nervous system and you talk about that we have to come back to the moment? How did you, in effect, do that?
Yeah, that's a great question, because you're right. I used to hate happy people. I thought happy people were stupid because you clearly didn't know what pain I'm in. You clearly didn't know what's going on in the world. So yeah, like positive thinking does not work. I mean, it might work temporarily, but it's the Band-Aid. I call it the pink paint treatment. If you paint it pink, then it looks pretty for a while, but the rot is still there. So what changed for me was when I learned that there was nothing wrong with me. Yes, I'd been through these very horrendous situations. Yes, I'd experienced a lot of pain. And even though it's a mind-body thing, it really hurts. We're not imagining it. I used to feel like someone had hit my pelvis with a baseball bat. That's how painful it was. So when I learned that there was nothing wrong with me, like give or take everyday ups and downs, we cannot be broken. We have innate health, innate well-being. So I like to talk in analogies. So the way I would explain that is we are the blue sky. So if you think about the blue sky and you have clouds going through or an airplane or birds, the sky is not damaged or perturbed by the clouds or the airplane. It's still there. And even when we have storms, like where I live now, we're up a mountain, and in the winter we can have really bad storms and snow and hail, and it can get dark at 3 PM. And it could feel like the end of the world's coming. But when you understand weather and you know it's going to pass, there's no need to worry. The blue sky is still there afterwards, and you don't have to order it from Amazon afterwards, right? The blue sky is always there. Even if we go through hell, even if we're having a panic attack, even if we're in a lot of physical pain, it always passes. So now I know that that's true, and because I've experienced it many times. And because I'm not frightened of that kind of thinking anymore, it doesn't materialize into a panic attack. It doesn't materialize into the chronic pain anymore. My body stops screaming at me because my brain knows that I'm safe now. So I didn't actually work on getting rid of the pain. That's the interesting thing. When I came across this new paradigm in psychology that I talk about now, I didn't do it to get rid of the pain because I didn't know my pain could go away. I thought I was just going to have to live with it for the rest of life. I was just interested in this new way of understanding the mind. And after I'd done a 6-month course, I noticed my pain had gone, and my IBS, and my eczema, my allergies. All these things had just melted away because I see now that they were a result of my overthinking, my stressful thinking, spending hours and hours a day up in my head worrying what you thought of me. Was I wearing the right clothes? I made a mistake. When you come back to the moment where you're safe, it's like, and you feel connected with other people and you feel content. Why would your body scream at you? Why would my skin itch? It doesn't need to anymore. And it just melted away. My stomach is happy now. It's not grumbling and angry like it used to. So it's like, I think before I got the cart before the horse, I was trying to fix the pain and all the problems. And that was an anxious project, which was causing more problems. When I started coming back to understanding that I was only ever feeling my thinking about the problems and my thinking slowed down, then the pain melted away. So that's what I like to share with my clients. And it's a much more gentle, kind, loving way to be in the world.
Yeah. And the brain loves puzzles it can't solve, right? So if you have chronic pain and you have PTSD, the brain will think about that 24/7 because it's one of those unsolvable things, right? So it's a fantastic overthinking part for the brain because it's like, yes, give me this and I will gnaw on this the entire day. So this is what we fall into a lot, I think, when we experience trauma, is that that's why it stays with us. Our brain is just so efficient at taking care of that. So I love that you found coming back to the present actually helped you and then had these multiple benefits that came along with that, with the chronic pain and the IBS going away. So those are some wonderful positive benefits. Is there a specific technique that you used to help you, I would say, maybe redirect your thinking or rewire the thinking? Or was this something that you worked on gradually every day, just in whatever way it came to you?
No, I'd say the exact opposite of that. I stopped working on it because if there's nothing broken and you don't need fixing, there's nothing to do. And when I first heard that, I was like, oh, thank God, because I was exhausted. I was an expert at thought hygiene. That's what I used to show with my clients before, how to keep your thinking positive. And trying, even ignoring your thinking, is doing something. And that is sending to a message to your brain that you're in danger. So I had this mild river of tension, anxiety in my life all day long. And when I realized that thought is always moving, like if you think of it like the clouds moving, or if you think of it like trains in a station, trains going in and out of a major like Grand Central Station all day long. Thoughts, they say we have something like 80 or 90,000 thoughts a day. Most of those we don't even register. And some of them are very sticky, some of them are painful, but they're all moving through. So any kind of technique or modality, it's like dragging the train back into the station to work out how to make it leave. Well, it already left. Right? So when you understand that thought is always moving, there is nothing to do. Now, it doesn't mean I don't do anything. I do plenty. I just published another book. I'm coaching people all around the world. I'm speaking at conferences. My life is very busy, but I don't have to do anything to fix my thinking because there's nothing wrong with it. I'm not afraid even now of having a funky thought. Like we all get a stinky thought every now and again. So what? It's moving through. It's a storm. It's moving through. So because I don't have anything on that anymore, I don't judge myself for having, my blood sugar was doing something crazy over the weekend and I just was like, oh, right. And I had a book launch to do and I had to drag myself to it. And it's like, so what? If I don't get upset about it, it's not a big deal. Life is what we think. So if I think trauma is going to damage me for the rest of my life, I'm going to feel damaged. But not everybody reacts to trauma the same way. Some people could have had the things that happened to me, and that's just like an average Friday night for them. You go to the bar or the pub, you get drunk, you have a fight. To me, it was terrifying. So that was my thought-created reaction to that experience. Like I don't know, warden in a prison sees violence every day. That's his job, right? So we're only ever feeling our thinking about everything, not the situation, which is absolutely freedom, because when you understand that, you're then not a victim of your circumstances. You're not a victim of your past or the future. And I can certainly mess up and think, about next week or, a mistake I made yesterday. But so what? If I don't feed it or fight it, it can't hurt me. It's not going to damage me. I can't be damaged. Good news. So I come back to the moment and it's actually okay. And at first, this seemed like way too simple for all my complicated problems. But now I see the complicated problems were only made of thought in the first place. So I've been through some hellish traumas, and it doesn't matter if they happened yesterday or 30 years ago. They're not happening to me right now. And I have the freedom to think exactly what I want about it. And I prefer today to be in a better mood. And in a better mood, those things which are still true don't bother me.
It's really powerful. And I think empowering for people to understand if they can't be broken, there actually is nothing wrong that I need to fix, because that's what we work on all the time, basically without stop. So we try to find techniques and things to fix us. So this is so empowering. And does it help to find things that bring you joy? Because you mentioned a few things, like you were writing the books and you were doing things that fulfilled you. Does that help, being in the moment when you have things to do that actually bring you joy and recharge you and kind of light you up in that way?
Yes and no, because whether something's negative or positive, it's sad or joyful, nothing on the outside of us can make us think or feel anything. Even like, it's my birthday in a couple of weeks and I'm planning a birthday party and I'm having so much fun planning the birthday party, but the birthday party hasn't happened yet. I'm feeling my thinking about the birthday party, right? So whether it's a happy thing or a sad thing, we're only ever feeling our thinking about it. We can never feel the circumstances. We only ever feel our thinking about the circumstances. Now, but do I like doing fun things? Absolutely. I do my water aerobics class every Friday morning. It's my treat at the end of the week. I love going hiking. I love, hanging out with my friends. I love doing a lot of things, but I know now that it's not the thing, it's not the beach or the hot bath, that's bringing me joy. It's my thinking about it. And that's okay. It's not right, or it's not a judgment. It's just, it brings the freedom. Like, real quick story. I had a friend who, she loved her acupuncture. I hate acupuncture. The thought of putting needles in my skin gives me the heebie-jeebies. So acupuncture doesn't work for me, but she loves it. And I try to explain to her, but it's not the acupuncture, it's your thinking about it. She gets excited going on the way to the appointment. So she's not even there yet. So how is the acupuncture helping her? It's her thinking about it, right? So it's kind of like she was treating acupuncture like a gas station. She was going there to fill up on calm. And what I was so happy to show her that that calmness, it's who you really are. When all the stinky thinking falls away, you are the blue sky. You are that calm feeling. You are that joy you feel when you're walking on the beach. And you can have that in traffic. You can have that in pain. You can have that in all kinds of situations when you know that's who you really are. And we can fall out of the scary thinking and come back to the moment, and we're okay. Now, do we go through difficult situations? Absolutely. I've been living through a war here where I am right now. It's very sad and can be scary at times. And then you come back to the moment. I do the dishes, I feed the cat, and life goes on. So it's very empowering to know that you can never be broken and you're only ever feeling your thinking.
Yeah. To me, this sounds fascinating. And actually, this is it's sort of the very first time we've discussed this on the podcast, because usually we talk about techniques and things that people can apply, to fix things. So this is actually a breath of fresh air and a very empowering perspective on how we can help ourselves heal. I love the analogy about the weather and how you are looking at things. I just want to ask you, can this be difficult for people to get started with, especially if we're kind of caught up in maybe even a victim mentality, or we are stuck in some very dark places, and this idea that, oh, we just change our thoughts or the thinking that we have about that. What do you say to your clients if they have a bit of a struggle, let's say, to start off on this path? Is there anything that you can share with them that might help them get started?
Yeah. you're right. It can be a struggle. And I think sometimes when we've kind of locked into that low mood and we're like, I carried around a story with me for a long time that the world is a scary, dangerous place. Don't even leave your house because you're going to get hurt. And like I said, if you told me, no, it's fine, come with me, we'll go to a yoga class. I'm like, no, 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 no. I've got police reports and x-rays to prove it. Like I knew if I went out of my house, I was going to get hurt. It wasn't just I thought it, I knew it. So when people are convinced, when people are wedded to that view of the world, it is a struggle, it is hard. So that's why I don't use techniques, because techniques are really good for the person who invented them, right? They work well for that person. Oh, this is a good way. But quite honestly, when I'm in a low mood, and if you tell me to journal or meditate or tap or whatever, I'm like, screw you. I don't care. Leave me alone. Right? I don't have the energy to do that when I'm in a low mood. The only time I'm going to have the energy to do that is when I'm in a better mood. And when I'm in a better mood, I don't need the technique anymore because I'm in a better mood, right? So it's a bit of a conundrum. So instead of techniques and modalities and trying to convince anybody or push them, the way I've learned to work with my clients now is by helping them look for insights. Insights, which is a sight from within, is a shift in thinking. When you have a shift in your thinking, you see things differently, and nothing out here has to change. And we've all had insights. Like, I'll give you a silly example. When I was a little girl, like I grew up in England, and I imagined, and I don't know where I got this idea from, that every mummy in England got a chance to be queen for the day. Right? And I used to wonder, when are we going to the palace? When is it going to be my mom's turn to go to the palace? I can't wait. I want to be princess. Right? And then I must have been about, I don't know, 6 or 7. And we must have learned at school, there's 365 days in the year. And I probably worked out that there are more than that many women in England. So it wasn't feasible. That was a stupid idea. And it just went away, right? I give another silly example. When I went to college, I went to Manchester University to do textiles. And I remember when I first got there, I visited a friend into her dorm room. And I remember walking in, it was one of those situations where you have like a kitchen area and bedrooms around that kitchen space. And this girl was sitting there and she was eating cornflakes for dinner. And I remember thinking, you can't do that. Cornflakes are for breakfast. Like in the house I grew up in, which was very strict and very perfectionist, you ate breakfast cereal for breakfast and it was put away. And if you were eating breakfast cereal in the evening, that means you were lazy. That means you could be bothered to cook dinner. You didn't go shopping. You messed up, right? We don't do that, right? So eating cornflakes for dinner was bad. And I thought, but there's no cornflakes police. Who would know if I ate cornflakes for dinner? Oh my gosh, I can have cornflakes for dinner. This is great. So and that whole conversation happened in my head in seconds, a split second. I went from that's wrong, that's bad, to no, that's cool. I'm allowed to do that. I just left home. Right? And I'm not saying I don't even eat cornflakes for breakfast. Cornflakes is not the issue. The point is my thinking shifted. And if thinking should shift about cornflakes, they can shift about being the queen. They can shift about the stories I have in my head about pain and trauma and relationships and parents and childhood, my job, my neighbors, politics. I have had ideas in the past which I was absolutely stuck to. And now I see it quite differently. So my work as a coach is really guiding and pointing people to see things differently. And when you start explaining how something works, like I just explained how the mind works, how thought is created, and people, they might go like, huh, what? And then a couple of days later, they'll message me and they go, oh my gosh, I just realized what you were saying. My husband loves this movie. I hate the movie. So it can't be the movie that was making us, have that experience, because otherwise we'd both love it. He wanted me to watch sports. I don't like sports, right? We are all living in our own thought-created worlds. And the thought is always moving. It can change. And nothing out here has to change. I don't have to do anything to make it change. It's moving on all the time. And as I go up in my mood and I get better mood, I get a better perspective, my mood's going to change. The quality of my thinking's going to change. And, you can look around. Like I looked around and where did my back pain go? Where did the chip on my shoulder about all the things like not making mistakes and doing it wrong? All gone. I didn't work on it. That's the point. Working on it means that there's an issue. Working on it means there's a problem. There was no problem. The problem was in my thinking, and I had moved on. Yes, it's a new paradigm. It's a new way of looking at things. And that's what my books are about, to point to the fact that if we're not broken and we're only ever feeling our thinking, then we don't have to be a victim of our circumstances, and everybody can get well.
Yeah, that is so powerful. And that's true. There's no cornflakes police. I love that. And actually, for most things that we experience in life, there's no police around that. So we can change our thinking. We can change the way that we look at things and believe in things. And like you said, that can actually happen very quickly in many situations, surprisingly quickly. Now, you wrote some novels, and you also have your new book out, which is called Beyond Diagnosis. Does that explain some more of what we just talked about, or what is the Beyond Diagnosis about?
Yeah, thank you. It's so the first three books are novels, and at first I was just writing stories because I thought, you know, I find people identify with stories really well because the characters do the falling down, the suffering, the searching and the happy ending. They find, these answers and, that I'm talking about. And then about 2 years ago, I was sitting on my sofa and I suddenly thought, there are so many people within the community of coaches that, that I work in who have recovered from mental health diagnoses, everything from psychosis to bulimia to ADHD, OCD, even autism. I'm talking about things that people think that you can't recover from. Some, like you were saying, some very dark places like schizophrenia. But wouldn't it be amazing to collect all their stories and put them together in a book? So that's what the new one's about. It only came out about 2 weeks ago, and it was an Amazon #1 bestseller on the hot new release list for a couple of days, which is very exciting. And so it's called Beyond Diagnosis because there's 40 stories in the book, and they come from all over the world, from America to New Zealand to Africa to the UK to Europe. And like I said, every kind of mental health diagnosis you can think of. And I guarantee you all of them started with prolonged stressful thinking. Now, why some people, when they get into prolonged stressful thinking, some will start drinking, others will start cutting. Some people are overeating, some people are not eating. Some people are, doing destructive things to themselves. Other people are doing destructive things to other people. And some people will flip out into an alternate reality. I see now that all of that are coping mechanisms. Every mental health diagnosis you can think of is a coping mechanism for a state of mind that is too painful to tolerate. And so it's actually wisdom. And if you think about even something like psychosis, where someone flips out into a different reality, is actually wisdom. Because if it's so painful in the reality they've created with their thinking, they're now going into an alternate one, hopefully that will keep them so that they will eventually get help. So I have worked personally with people with all of these situations. I had a client who, she had 10 diagnoses. She had just come out of a mental hospital after her third suicide attempt. She had borderline personality disorder. She had bulimia, anorexia, dyslexia, PTSD, CPTSD, you name it, she had it. And she'd been cutting her skin on her upper arms or her inner thighs, her stomach, so badly she needed stitches on a repeated basis. And I started explaining these ideas to her, and she got well. She ended up getting accepted into a university program for physical education. They would not take her because of her mental health record. So I said, okay, let's go back to the hospital. She went back to the psychiatrist, and this psychiatrist had never written a clean bill of health for one of her patients in 40 years of practice. So she wrote, that's gone, that's gone. All of her things had gone. She was off all her medication. She went to the university. She finished her undergrad, and they had her start her master's degree before she finished her undergrad. She came top of the year in a second language, and she's now off doing her dream, teaching. She's a personal coach and teaching people and working with Special Olympics trainees. It's amazing. This is a girl who didn't want to be here. I've worked with people with all kinds of weird and wonderful phobias, like misophonia. Have you heard of misophonia?
I have not.
Right. So misophonia was an interesting one. I had an ambassador, and a European ambassador was living here where I am now, and his daughter had diagnosed herself, I discovered later, because kids like to diagnose themselves off the internet now, with something called misophonia. So I did some research and I watched a Duke University lecture, the professor talking about misophonia, and it's notably a fear of certain noises. Now, these noises are always breathing and like this kind of clicking, eating noises, like that kind of thing when people are eating loudly or breathing loudly, sneezing, snorting, that kind of stuff. And this Duke University professor said it was a neurological condition and it is only found in young white females. I was like, what? Back up a moment. How can it be neurological if it's only found in white, Western, young, spoiled, forgive me, right? So this kid that I met, she was so angry and so resentful at her family, she didn't want to eat meals with them. So what a great way to say, I can't eat with the family. I have to isolate in my bedroom. I've got misophonia, right? And so her parents were going along with this. And I was like, hold on a minute. I said to her, what does it feel like when this sensation comes over you? And she says, I feel violent. I said, have you ever hit anybody? And she said, yes. I said, who did you hit? She said, my brother. And I thought, who hasn't hit their brother? I know my brother's hit me, right? So I said to her, if you were on an airplane and the man next to you, you don't know, he's eating his airplane food and he's making these kind of noises. I said, what would happen? She said, I'd feel violent. He said, would you hit him? She said, no. I said, isn't that interesting? You can control it when you want to. Let's talk about that. Right? And so it became quite clear she didn't want to go to school. She didn't want to eat with people. How convenient. Now, I'm sounding very cynical right now. It's because I am. So all of these diagnoses, they're made up. And the first part of my book is showing with scientific proof, citations from research, there is no scientific proof for any mental health diagnosis in this book called the DSM, which is the Bible of psychiatry. The only mental health diagnoses that have scientific proof are dementia and Parkinson's disease. None of the others have blood tests, urine tests, MRIs, nothing. They are all based on opinion. And I can go, recommend books for learn about the history of the research of all this. But there is no such thing as a chemical imbalance. After 30 years, they've found no proof. And the top psychiatrists and psychologists at the FDA, the NIMH, all these government bodies and top universities are admitting now there has never been any proof. It was made up. It was a marketing ploy that they want to blame the drug companies. And the drug companies say, that's what the professors told us. And yet they're still selling the drugs, which are then leading to some really terrible addictions and side effects and withdrawal symptoms. It's a mess. So my book is really a book of hope, because if you're in a situation where you've been given a diagnosis, even multiple ones, and you've been told you have to take this medication and you've been told you're going to be disabled for the rest of your life, I can point you story after story of people who've recovered. And when I say recovered, I mean they're off their medications, they're living their best lives, they don't need any more treatment. And like me, my PTSD gone, my chronic pain gone. I've got stories in here from psychosis. She is now a coach and she's living her best life, traveling around the world, speaking at conferences, and she's amazing, right? People who were overeating, people who were obese, and they're now, they don't even have an eating problem. They just, in your right mind, why would you overeat? It was such an incredible privilege to take these stories and put them into a book. So if anybody's interested, there's a website to go with it. And I'm going to be adding new stories as we go along, more stories of hope, because I know there are more out there. Yeah, it's a privilege to do this work. It really is.
Thank you for sharing that, and congratulations on this book and it being an Amazon bestseller. That's amazing. And yes, I think getting the message of hope out is one of the crucial things that we can do to talk more about mental health in general. And very interesting what you touched on with the DSM as well, because there was some controversy about how even the diagnostic categories were created and whether those are even valid or not. So I think that's a whole other topic for another episode, because that will take up quite a lot of time. But yeah, there are a lot of problems with how the system is structured at the moment. And of course, that is one of the things that goes into how we deal with our mental health. So Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And you work with clients, and what kind of programs and services do you have available? So if listeners have kind of become curious through this episode and they'd like to work with you, how can they do that?
Yeah, so I do one-on-one coaching. I have a few different coaching packages, like different hours or month-long packages. So they're welcome to email me about that, and or you can contact me through my website. And I've got the 4 books out now, and I'm going to be doing a masterclass, kind of a book study on this new one, the Beyond Diagnosis. It will be a 12-week course because there's 10. I split them up into 10 sections in the book, like eating disorders, trauma disorders, child and adolescent things, substance abuse, things like that. So there'll be an introduction class and a conclusion one at the end. So it'll be a 12-week course. It's going to start in probably a couple of months' time because it's such a big book, I have to give people time to read it first because it's a big textbook. And yeah, and I have a membership group. It started out as a women's membership group, but we have actually a guy just joined, and why not? It's like, and he's actually one of the guys who gives his story in the book. And that's in my membership, we have 3 live coaching sessions a week. It's only $25 a month. It's an absolute bargain. So in those 3 coaching sessions, one of them is a book club, and we study books that are on the theme of what I've been sharing tonight. And the other one is one's in the evening, so it suits American time, and the other one's in the morning, which suits Australians, because poor Australians, they always miss out on everything. It's always on US and European time. So, in there we do get general coaching. I have guests that come, some of the people from the book, my teachers, I have all kinds of colleagues that come and share their experiences in the group as well. So that's an absolute bargain. And then I also have something which I love doing, which is WhatsApp mentoring. I mentor people via WhatsApp. So it's for a set fee a month, you can WhatsApp me as long as I'm awake, 6 days a week, right? And it's great for getting support, because it doesn't always, our thought storms and our breakdowns don't always come in like time for a session. What if you're doing carpool? What if you're, in the supermarket? So it's like having your own personal cheerleader. So within reason, I can get back, pretty quickly and support people via WhatsApp, and I can send memes and resources and videos and recommend things. And it's a very incredible support system, and I love doing it. It's like I have a front row seat in watching people's recovery and guiding them out of some painful situations, and you don't have to go deep into it anymore because there's someone in your corner supporting you. So all of these things the information about them are available on my website. So I actually have 2 websites now. One is my main one, which is my name, chanastudley.com. And there you can contact me through that one. And then I've also made a new one for the new book, which is called Beyond Diagnosis. There's a hyphen in the middle, Beyond Diagnosis. And through there, you can contact me and ask me information about any of these things. Yeah, and then I have a free giveaway if anybody's interested. I've just done a ebook on detoxing because, if people have been on medication for a long time and they're ready to come off of it, it can be a bit bumpy and a bit scary. So I actually have a diploma in pharmacology as well as coaching and psychology. And I've been helping a lot of people over the years to come off medication. And I always work in hand with a medical professional. That people need to have a tapering plan, designed by a medical professional. And then you have me as a coach to supervise and help because sometimes when we have a step down, especially those last few milligrams can be very, very toxic, and there can be a lot of side effects, and it can be scary. You think, oh my gosh, my original condition's coming back. No, it's just side effects. So the ebook explains a lot of that stuff, and I'm available to, talk to people about that and help them through that bumpy place. But it does work, and you can come off of it, and there is a life beyond all of these things. So yeah.
That sounds wonderful. And thank you for all this amazing work that you do. And of course, we will be linking to all of Hannah's offerings in the show notes as well. So be sure to check there on how you can connect with her. We'll be linking the websites, we'll be linking to her latest book as well. And of course, you can find then the membership there and the freebie. Start checking out her things and see if it makes a difference in your life, and tell us about that. Let us know what you experience and how you find it. And of course, if you want to connect with her and have the WhatsApp coaching, that sounds really great, by the way. I like the idea of that. So if you want that, and we'll make sure that we link to all that information for you as well. Well, this has been another incredible episode, and I really hope our listeners have enjoyed our journey into the mind body connection as much as I have. This has taken a really different turn than what I first thought at the beginning of the episode that we would be talking about. So I really appreciate having these insights from you and having you share your wisdom and knowledge on this topic. This was fantastic. So thank you so much for your time and coming on and sharing all this with us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, and I hope we get to chat again. It sounds like there are many more things that are open than what we talked about that we could still go into. So, yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate having you here today, and take really good care of yourself. And of course, we will be keeping you in our thoughts and wishing you all the best and stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen in. If you enjoy the Journey podcast, please support us by subscribing, sharing on social media, and leaving us a review. We appreciate you. And you can find more of The Journey on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and our website, thejourney.com. Sending you love and courage, and see you next time.